Hey all, Binks here. The rise of the Phoenix is upon us, and with it comes a brand new slew of cards to Marvel Snap. We have a Season Pass card, 2 Series 5 and 2 Series 4 cards coming this month. Moving forward with the channel, every single month I'm going to be jumping on ahead of time and talking about the upcoming cards, discussing their strengths, weaknesses, potential synergies, and overall impressions of what kind of decks they may fit in, and I'm even going to rank each out of 5 at the very end of the video. Super excited to be doing this. Let me know in the comments what I said right, what I said wrong. Make sure to like and subscribe, and you can catch me live either here on YouTube or at twitch.tv/Binks_plays. Enjoy. You peace! First up, we have the Season Pass card, the Phoenix Force. A 5 energy 6 power card with on reveal, revive one of your destroyed cards and merge with it. That card can move each turn. So essentially, if you have a specific card that dies, you can then play Phoenix Force. If you play it on curve, then you'll have a turn to move it as well. Kind of mixes the idea of destroy synergies with move synergies in a really, really interesting way that we've never seen. As far as strengths of the card go, I mean, if you can hit the perfect line with a move card, like, you know, a Vulture, Dagger, or a Human Torch, it's going to be really, really great to be able to move it. It can also just, you know, if you have anything that gets destroyed in the mid game, this can revive that power similar to what Venom does, where Venom, you maybe destroy like a big card, maybe you play a Maximus on 3, you Venom that Maximus, so you keep that 7 power, and then you on 5 you Phoenix Force, and you get that 7 power Maximus back in your back on the field again. Maybe has some really cool Nimrod synergies if you can use some ramp and different things like that. The weakness is its stat line. If you're not actually hitting this effect, a 5 energy 6 power feels terrible to play. You know, at a minimum, you're looking to get 9 or 10 power out of your 5 drop. So just really, really weak if you're not actually getting the synergy to go off. It's always, you know, is it worth it to add this kind of like multiple card destruction and revival synergy to certain decks? Or is there going to be kind of some new Phoenix Force deck that'll be created? So I think that it's going to be hard to like get enough payoff out of this to make it worth it to run in a deck. As far as some really good synergies, anything with movement synergies, so Vulture, Dagger, Human Torch are going to love to be revived by this. Also, like ongoing abilities can be really, really interesting to get pulled back up by Phoenix Force because, you know, it makes it really weird as to where this ongoing ability is going to land. It gives you some unpredictability, which is why Vision does do some pretty good things in the game. So pretty excited to see any card that with an ongoing synergy or a movement trigger is going to really, really love and enjoy getting Phoenix Force to revive it. And then what decks could I see this in? It might be a variant of the move deck where you're trying to get some kind of interesting early destruction thing going on. This might just be in a destroy deck that you're destroying big things with things like Venom to then bring those new ones. But I really think that Phoenix Force is going to have to find a new or unique archetype. I'm really excited to play around with the card and see some different things on there. But I think that as a Season Pass card, what I really love about it the most is that it's a very interesting and unique card. I think it's going to be really good for the game. Next up, we have Jean Grey, a Series 5 card releasing on July 11th. Jean Grey is a 3 energy, 3 power card that reads ongoing. Players must play their first card here each turn if possible. So essentially what we're going to be looking at there is that whenever Jean Grey comes down, if you're going to play multiple cards in that turn, it works very similarly to like an opposite Morag where you have to play there. Now it does say if possible, which I think is very, very important. If you're unable to play any of your cards into the Jean Grey lane, then you're okay with that. So things like Storm or, you know, landing into a location where nothing can happen there. Things like Ebony Maw can kind of like completely shut this down, right? You know, there might be decks that somehow try and get both those cards out at the same time. It'd be pretty tough, but it seems kind of interesting. As far as strengths go, this is one of the craziest control tools that's ever been released in the game. You know, you pair it with anything like Wave and Sandman and you completely cut off your opponent's options. Just really, really demanding card to deal with, and it might be like a meta-defining card where you kind of have to work out a way to play around this card at any point. I think the strengths of this card are crazy. It's very, very, very high power ceiling. For weaknesses, you can definitely run into some situations where Jean Grey can like backfire on you. Maybe your opponent's a little bit more prepared. Maybe a Jean Grey comes down, but they're able to wave you, and you know, you're not set up to end up winning a game. So there's definitely some downsides. It is a mirrored effect. but I think most of the weaknesses can probably be taken care of in the deck building stage as long as you're building your deck to be work better around Jean Grey, as long as it comes down, it's going to be almost always in your favor. As far as synergies go, we've already talked a little bit about Sandman and Wave and the potential for that to just kind of lock things down. Maybe your opponent like plays a Professor X on top of her and it can kind of like shut it down completely. So there's a lot of different synergies and ways that Jean Grey is going to work. Honestly, there might be too many to even think about, but I think that this card is going to be really cool to see how many different cards it can have cool interactions with. For decks with Jean Grey, I think that she is high enough power level that she's going to be found all over the place in more controlling style decks, and even like maybe bounce style decks that knows that they're going to have a lot of options for things to play. So it might hinder your opponent way more and you could just kind of like throw cards into the Jean Grey lane. I think Surfer might want Jean Grey. You can go Surfer on 3, Brood on 4. That location's filled up. Your opponent still has to invest there as you can go other places. And just any, 3 drop, you're going to look at it and think that it might work with Surfer. I really think that there are a ton of possibilities for Jean Grey. I'm excited to work out the puzzles of where she fits best. Up next, we have Echo, a 1 energy, 2 power. It says, after an opponent plays an ongoing card here, remove its abilities. A really interesting way to counter any ongoing abilities. I mean, if your opponent's running an ongoing deck, you basically make it like Isle of Silence for them. It says remove its ability, so I'm gonna guess it kind of has like a leech type effect. So maybe you end up running into some funny things with Patriot as well. But a really cool card, and as they talk about in the video, the very first counter to Cosmo that we've ever seen. If you play Echo down, your opponent plays Cosmo, we're able to negate the Cosmo. As far as the strengths of the card go, it's a 1 energy 2 power, so it's a premium statted card. It's a card that you can definitely slot into multiple different decks, especially if there are certain ongoing cards that really crush your strategies. For weaknesses, if you don't really get any benefit of playing this effect, you're just playing a 1/2, that could be a little bit rough. Usually you want a pretty impactful thing from any 1-drop you're fitting in the deck. Really, the big 3 right now are Nebula, which can get a ton of power, Iceman, and Spider Pig that do a ton of disruption to your opponent. So Echo, if this actually isn't getting any disruption, as you kind of get guarantees from with things like Spider Ham and Iceman, pretty tough to want to push this into that 1-drop slot when there's other better options available. As far as synergies go, I think that Wong decks are going to absolutely love Echo. Now, you can still get Rogued or Enchantress to kind of shut things down, but they can't, absolutely stop what you're trying to do. Maybe there's a chance that Hela decks even want to run this, where you play an Echo out, then you play your Invisible Woman, set up your MODOK and your Hela. That's all going to depend on how much Cosmo is played. Cosmo is actually really outside of the meta right now. There was a time where Cosmo was everywhere. Now you really rarely see Cosmo all that much. But maybe, with some of the cards that are coming out soon, that might change. So really kind of like the way that Echo is going to help your deck mostly depends on Cosmo, I would say, or if there's just other big ongoing things that are happening in the meta. And yeah, for decks, I think Wong decks are going to absolutely love this card. And I think that this is just going to be a really meta-dependent tech card. If there's like important things like Darkhawks and dinosaurs everywhere, an early Echo can kind of shut down one of your lanes from your opponent point slamming there, and maybe you can then build your strategy around that. So it's really going to be a meta-dependent card, in my opinion, to what decks it fits into. And the decks, variety are going to be really short if there's not too many things going around. Probably, I think almost any Wong deck is going to want Echo because it's just a great counter to Cosmo or trying to stop anything. But overall, it's just going to depend on if it's a tech card that's useful in the meta. Next up, we have Legion, which is a Series 4 card coming out on July 25th. Is a 5 energy, 8 power. We originally data mined it as a 7 power, but now it's an 8 power. On reveal, replace each other location with this one. So crazy effect, kind of like Quake. If you have any, location that can, create things, creating multiple versions of it is pretty insane. If you have any like big disruptive locations like Isle of Silence or different things like that, Legion can, really just change the game when he drops. As far as strengths go, I definitely think that for certain feature locations, Legion is just completely busted. So there's going to be certain days where there's just something where if you Legion it, you're going to cause mass chaos for your opponent. Maybe it's something like a destruction location. You play Legion onto its spread and you have things like Wolverine and Deadpool that can, pop off, or you have like a Nimrod that you can just play down and attack all the different locations. So this is a very important card to think about anytime there's a feature location. As far as weaknesses go, it's all about RNG. It's the same reason why cards like Quake very rarely see play. Legion, there's no real way to break them. There's no location that you can create and then like on curve have Legion make a huge impact. It's going to be really random outside of feature locations. I cannot see this card seeing really any competitive play. The really cool synergies that you can see with this card, it mostly just relies on locations. I really don't think that there's any specific card that synergizes with it. If you storm a location on 4 and then you play Legion on that stormed location, you might think that all 3 lanes will shut down, but actually on turn 6 you can still play in the other 2 lanes that weren't stormed. You know, there's just kind of some problems with having any level of consistency just with specific cards as opposed to feature locations. And what deck would you see Legion in? Well, I'll tell you what, I'll make some funny decks with him. Don't you worry, I'll find some funny ways to play Legion, but if you're looking for a competitive deck, I don't really see him fitting anywhere. And next up, we have the card that I predict to be the best card of the bunch, Mirage, a Series 4 card coming out on August 1st. It is a 2 energy, 2 power that says on reveal, copy the lowest cost card in your opponent's hand into your hand, give it +2 power. This card does so many things. To me, it's like a Maria Hill on steroids. What it's going to do is give you information on what's in your opponent's hand, so you know what small card might fit in on a later turn or what card they might be playing the very next turn. It's usually going to be a pretty good card because your opponent chose to put in their deck. So it's not like getting a random card. You're getting what someone else would put in their deck. Now, there could be some bad synergy there, but in general, your opponents are going to be putting in better cards than a randomly generated one. And you're giving it +2 power. So it's going to be a power spike. You're investing power later to get a small card that's overpowered to play. I haven't seen too much love for Mirage. People just kind of think it's a little bit memey and, you know, probably a solid card in like a dinosaur deck. I think that this card is insanely strong. You're getting basically 2/4 worth of power, information, and a resource. As for weaknesses, it is a 2/2, so if you play it late, it feels a little bit weak, and you have to really, you know, play the card to get +2 power. And it has weaknesses if people are running low-cost cards that only work if you have synergies for it. So if the low-cost card that you're getting from your opponent doesn't make any sense for you to play, and it's actually, you know, pretty bad for you to play, then you're just playing a 2/2, which kind of sucks. I think that this card fits into like good card decks. It is just a very good 2-drop. It kind of fits into that really upper echelon of it's a well-statted 2-drop that gets you a good effect. You know, it's kind of like on like the Scorpion, Lizard, Silk kind of level of 2-drops that you'd want to fit in. I would love to play this card in any of my Sarah decks to just get an additional resource. I'd love to play this as like my 2-drop in my Surfer deck to find a small card that I can fit in like turn 4 and 5, which sometimes gets a little bit awkward. I think that once people realize how strong this card is, you're going to see it in a lot of different decks. And let's give every single card a rating 1 through 5. 5 out of 5 card is a card that's kind of like meta defining. 4 is in like 1 or 2 decks and like a pretty good option, like kind of like an A tier card. 3, it can be found in some decks as long as synergy makes it work. 2 is a card that has some very fringe play, and a 1 is going to be a card that you pretty much are never going to see outside of really weird circumstances. I think that Phoenix Force is 3 out of 5. I think that Jean Grey is a 4 out of 5. I think that Echo is a 2 out of 5. I think that Legion is a 1 out of 5. And I think that Mirage is going to be a 4 out of 5 card. Make sure to subscribe. Watch that one too.